Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about the Badass Women of Supernatural Part 3. That's right, there are so many of them that we needed 3 sessions to cover all of them, and we'll see if we get through all of them, but we're going to try. So before we dive into that massive goal, let's let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, Carole Stokes. I'm a longtime fan from season 3, fanfic reader and fanfic writer. You can find all of my fiction on AO3 under Firesign 10 and Twitter on true_Firesign10. You hush, Melissa.
Anne?
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I was a latecomer to the Supernatural family, but I dived right down that rabbit hole. I'm a writer and editor and former journalist and an unabashed Dean girl. My work includes, I was editor of an anthology called Making Notes, Music of the Carolinas, which of course is about music in the Carolinas. And I was co-author of a memoir that Ann Moses of Tiger Beat magazine fame wrote about her tenure as editor of the magazine in the late 60s and early 70s.
Nice. Michelle?
Hi, my name is Michelle Crowley. I am a lecturer at Northern Kentucky University. I teach communication and pop culture studies. And unfortunately, I do not have nearly the tenure as some of the other fans here. I'm another recent addition to the Supernatural fandom, but I, like Anne, have completely dived in and 125% immersed myself into it. And I think this is the 3rd time I'm back here on the Badass Women one. So looking forward to it.
Melissa?
I'm Melissa Silvestre. I'm a tech writer by day and a Supernatural fan 24/7. I started with the pilot, and I'm very grateful for the Supernatural fan group that Gail runs on Facebook, because that helped me get through the last year, because it was a tough one. And I love these panels.
Well, and we love having everybody on the panels and in the group, so thank you very much. And I also came late to the party. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binged 11 seasons in 4 months so that I could start live tweeting at the beginning of season 12. And I know many people have done that many seasons in less time. I did take some time off to sleep. I'm sure I could have done it in less time. But anyhow, I have been down that rabbit hole and keep on going. So I love the show and I love talking about it. So we've covered a lot of badass women in the first 2 panels, and we've still got more to go. And kicking it off with Missouri Mosley. Thoughts on Missouri and what made her badass, and you know, how she figures into maybe the show's legacy or just your memories of the show for you. Anne?
Well, Missouri is one of my favorite characters. I was really disappointed that they didn't do more with her and eventually killed her off. But it just, she was a strong woman and a psychic and a hunter, which I thought that was an interesting combination. And she was also a good friend of John Winchester. I wish she had jerked a few knots at him, but you know, my memories of her are just great. I love when she tells Dean that she's gonna hit him or something for even thinking about putting his feet on her table. And then it was really, I thought that the episode was really sad with her granddaughter not having been part of her life and all of that. That really was sad to me. But I thought she was a strong, interesting character that they could have done a lot more with.
Mm-hmm. Carole?
I totally agree that she's a strong person, a strong character. She was psychic, but then she didn't just sit on her hands. She went out and did something about it. Really, I think the only reason we didn't see more of her was Loretta Devine's so busy. She was, at that point she went on Grey's Anatomy and she had a lot of other stuff going on. And because of that, we actually are grateful to have another character, Bobby Singer. So, they had to fill that in. And so that's what they did. But I would have loved to have seen more Missouri. And she's definitely a character that in fanfic has a huge role that she didn't get to have on the show itself. So it's a real tribute to the actress and the writing of that character, that despite her so brief moment, nonetheless had such an impact that she's gone on to like fanfic history. Likewise agree. It was bad enough they killed her off, and I felt it was really almost a little disrespectful. Like they didn't, I mean, I know they all die because it's a dangerous life, but it was just, we haven't seen her in like 12 years and then they bring her out to kill her off, and that was kind of like, really guys, really? So I prefer to just remember her in Home. And yeah, she was both warm and nurturing, but she didn't take any guff. She had that wooden spoon and she wasn't afraid to use it.
I agree. I had read so much fanfic that she is a big part of, that when I went back and did an earlier rewatch, I was shocked to realize how little she was in the show. Because there are a number of characters who may have only been almost a mention or a walk-on part who have gone on to fanfic immortality. But like Pastor Jim and Caleb and Daniel Elkins all live on in fanfic. But Missouri really surprised me when I saw how little she was in canon. Now, Anne and I watched the Supernatural anime, and it is almost canon. It's official, but it has a number of stories told. If they are from the original episodes, they're told a bit differently. And then it also has some original episodes that aren't in the live action. And Missouri played a much more prominent and long-running role in that series. It was interesting, though, because it's a Japanese anime written about a show set in Middle America, and their depiction of Missouri is a lot more like, maybe a Japanese shaman or holy woman than it is somebody like Missouri. It was a very interesting depiction that you're going, that's Missouri? Okay, I'll buy it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was an interesting take on the character, but it was nice to see her in so many more episodes. So we got that. Melissa.
I love Missouri. She is one of my favorite characters. Every moment she was on screen, I could not take my eyes away from her. I couldn't listen. I couldn't, be, even though I've seen episodes a billion times, I can't like read and watch. She's on the screen, everything stops to pay attention to her. She was that tough but nurturing mama or grandmama that so many of us wish we had. She didn't take any BS, not even from John Winchester. She didn't take it from the boys. You just knew she wasn't taking nothing from nobody, but she was still willing to be loving and open and wonderful. And even though I agree with Carole that it was really a character disservice to bring her back just to kill her, the fact that she went to that fate so strongly and just, she knew it was going to happen, and she wasn't a coward about it. She faced it and just let it happen. And I thought that was kind of cool. So,
okay.
I love her.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Michelle?
I just watched Home yesterday, and I was just thinking, because I know that because the actress wasn't able to continue on with the role, that's why we got a character of Bobby Singer. And he became the parental role for the boys. But I can't help but think about how different the boys may have been if they would have gone and sought refuge with Missouri instead of Bobby in their time of need. And what sort of shenanigans, I guess, that they were able to get into with Bobby, or, you know, with Missouri. I also found it interesting that there's a part in Home where Sam still feels something going on in the house, and Missouri's like, yeah, no, it's gone, it's good. And she admitted to him, saying, you know, I thought it was clear, but you still felt something. And I thought that that's a really good moment, a parental moment of vulnerability that the boys had not had up until that point. And so she's I wish we could have, like everyone else, I wish we could have seen some more of her, but her what she was able to do was pretty profound with the boys.
Now, someone else who only got 2 episodes was Lily Sunders, who had some regrets. And I thought she was a fascinating character. She was, she just went from being victimized and seeing her husband and her child murdered to becoming a true badass. And I did not expect to see her come back in one of the later seasons to help them save Jack. And so I was really, really impressed with that. Thoughts about Lily? Michelle, let's start with you.
I think with Lily, we get to see another side of supernatural women that, you know, started on the victimized side of things, and then it really came into their own. I mean, we see that with Jody, we see that with Donna, but they had the assistance of the hunters and of the boys. Whereas Lily, for, you know, what was it, 100+ years, she had to find her own way of figuring out, how am I going to stick it to the angels? How am I going to get my revenge? So I think it's a different view of women that gets personified with Lily.
Interesting. Melissa?
I love that even though we only saw her for 2 episodes, there's a real strong character arc. We find out, we see who she was at the beginning. Husband and child get murdered. We see that whole just absolute drive for revenge that just kept her alive for so long. And then we see her sort of hit the place of, you know, I've pursued this enough. I've taken all the revenge I need to take, and maybe it's time for me to step back and let this go. And I thought that was a really amazing character arc for a character who we only saw 2 episodes. That was definitely done by the writers and very well played by the actress.
I love that actress. She's been in several roles that are, of course, they escape me right now, but that I recognized her immediately when she was on the show. And I have to really agree with that her story, her changing through the arc of those 2 episodes was really interesting. And it was interesting that, you know, was that one of the first times we learned about Nephilim? The Nephilim?
I think so.
And that the angels wanted to kill them, you know, because they were half and half and powerful. And so anyway, I just thought she was very well done, and the way she ended giving up her magic and her life for Jack was just heart-rending.
Carole?
I concur with all of that. She's a really strong character. For the 2 episodes she's in, like you've said, some of you have already said that it was a very well fleshed out arc. She was a well fleshed out character. She brought a lot to that. You know, she was in that 100%. And the difference between our first sight of her, when she's like, avenge, 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 and then the second time we see her, and she's tired. She's tired. She's ready to lay it down. But, you know, she wants to see, is there some way she can tip the scales? But in the end, she did what she did, regardless of what the scales may have done. And she didn't do what she did in saving Jack because she thought, oh, now I can go to heaven. She did it because she felt it was the right thing to do. And it's not her sacrifice that got her to heaven. It was the fact that she did it not as part of any kind of bargain or anything, but she just threw herself into that and said, this is what I need to do. And she did it. And that's what tipped it so that she could in fact end up going to heaven. So she was a very interesting character and really, really well portrayed.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, if we could do a League of Extraordinary, women, I'd love to bring some of these folks back and be able to do something like that, even though they have shuffled off the mortal coil. When did that ever stop anybody in Supernatural? And then there's Pamela Barnes. She quite a character, propositioned both Winchester brothers at once, and really didn't shy away from anything. And it didn't go well for her, but she had a lot of personality. Carole?
Well, I loved Pamela from the get-go. She was, so pretty. She was sassy as hell. She may have had Jesse's tramp stamp on her, but her life was hers. And the whole thing where she's propositioning Dean and then like including Sam, and Dean's like, no.
You're not invited.
I actually was fortunate to see the actress at the Boston convention, and she started her panel by coming out and saying, "You really could bounce a quarter off that," which was it was hilarious. I loved every time we got to see her. I loved every one of her episodes. It was terrible when she died, and she knew it. She saw it coming. She knew it. She's like, you guys just don't even know what you're doing, but she went ahead and did whatever she could and what she needed to do anyway. So it was a real treat to then see her in heaven. It was a treat to see her in Dean's dream when he's locked in the room and they're running a bar together, and you're like, oh my God, that is just the best thing. They were having a great time. She's so great. And she is another character that in fan fiction is super great to work with, because she's so energetic and takes, holds no bar. I mean, she's like, I'm out there and doing stuff. And so she's a big winner in my book. She would definitely be in that League of Extraordinary Women by me.
Oh, yeah.
She was not going to just let stuff happen. She got in there.
Michelle?
I wish I had more to add, but I just, have to agree with what has already been said. I mean, she belongs in that League of Extraordinary Women. And also talking about strong women, to quote Harry Potter, greeted death as an old friend when death finally came along. And she's like, well, this is what it is, and this is how it's going to be. And I think that's a really strong characteristic of hers. And perhaps also talks about it with Missouri and Lily as well. But there's just something about her death that she was just very much okay with it. Same way with the blinding. Like, yeah, she lost her sight, but at the same time, she didn't really need it and made the best of it throughout the time.
Okay, Melissa?
Ditto what everybody else said. Sassy, fiery, and fierce. And I love that in a female character. So she's another one of those ones that, why did you have to kill her off? Because we needed more strong women, especially those who could counteract the boys.
Mm-hmm.
You just know that she could put them in their place when that needed to happen. And I'm sorry that they didn't do more with her character.
Okay, Anne?
Y'all have said it all, but I have to echo that sassy, that energy. She just, she's another one of my favorites. And I too loved Rocky's Bar, and that she was there bringing in the limes and helping Dean. And it really, I really, really hated that she died. But again, she faced it, like Michelle said, she just faced it full bore ahead, like she faced everything else. And I wish we had more of her, like Melissa said, to counteract some of the testosterone laden areas of the whole cast and crew there. But anyway, she was a great addition, a great character.
She also was one of the women during the Kripke era that could have been what's the word I'm looking for? I guess sexual exploitation, I guess. But I don't think it would have changed the storyline if she actually would have gotten with any of the boys. I think she was a strong enough character on her own that she didn't need to be defined by, you know, getting with Dean or getting with Sam. And that was something that was new for that time frame, that era of the series.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it was interesting that she's one of the characters who, when she was dying, called the boys on how many people are going to sacrifice for you. You've got a body count here. It's good that you're saving the world. Realize how many people you're burying. I didn't really plan to go out now. And, you know, they needed to hear that because there was a body count. And sometimes it was like, oh, yeah, well, necessary sacrifice. We have to go save the world again. And she called them on it. And I thought that was really interesting.
Right.
Now, speaking of someone who did get with both the boys and Bobby, Annie Hawkins.
Oh, dear.
Yes, a lot of foxholes.
It was all that foxhole.
All those foxholes.
And Sam's like, I was soulless.
Yeah, Sam's excuse was priceless. Well, I was so.
He had the grace to look kind of embarrassed. You know,
Yeah.
what? I didn't have a soul.
Oh, dear.
Who wants to start in on Annie? Because I loved her. She's only in one episode, but man, she kicked some ass.
Yeah, she really did. Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
She really did. And again, I wish we had seen more of her because she was just a straight, unlike Missouri, who was a psychic and a hunter, she was just a straight ahead hunter. And we didn't see all that many female hunters during the course of the whole show, except, you know, Mary. And that was much later. And I thought she was great. And the fact that she kept her wits about her, even as a ghost, and was, you know, trying to help the other ghosts. I thought that was really a good way they twisted it in the writing of the story. But yeah, she was a terrific character.
I thought she was a really good hunter. And also a good reminder, because we are so hyper focused on the boys so much of the time, that it was a good reminder, you know, that there is a hunter world out there. You know, we get reminded of this periodically, like, you know, in Asa Fox and stuff. And so here was one of those momentary that there are other hunters, and they're all kind of out there doing their things by themselves as well. Almost like that 1,000 points of light, you know. And that they all have their moments of interaction here and there as they weave throughout their cases. But it was nice to see she was just a hunter in her own right, and she wasn't hunting with guys, or she didn't need guys to hunt with or anything. She was a complete hunter entity on her own, and that was something very rare to see, I think, on the show. And so that was really good. And that could have been a character, again, much even like Jody or Donna, that we could have seen pop up from time to time. And I understand they couldn't, because the whole point was she was a ghost. But she could have been, and she was a good character, I thought.
Yeah.
Michelle?
I think she also came at a time with, you know, when they were still trying to figure, sorry, my cat's trying to get comfortable. When Bobby was still trying to figure out, you know, which world does he want to live in? And so him to have, she almost became his spirit guide. And so in an arc that's separate from the boys altogether, you know, she had her own story with Bobby, and, you know, how do we be ghosts sort of thing. And that would be an interesting spin-off, like sitcom, if the both of them are ghosts and still hunting and whatnot. But I you know, just having that kind of variety in these characters was refreshing.
Melissa?
Unpopular opinion ahead. I feel like this show had badass women, and they had women the CW want us to see as badass because they have to have a badass woman for it to not be just the boys. They're trying to cater to those women who have complained about some of the things that we know were misfires on the show in the portrayals of women. And this character to me falls directly in that second bucket. This is, here, look, we're giving you this woman hunter. She's only in one episode and she's really strong and she's really fabulous. And isn't she amazing? And it just really fell flat for me. And it's not the actress's fault. It's not the writer's fault. It's just, she never did anything for me. It just always felt like, here you go, here's your woman hunter. Now shut up and leave us alone.
and Melissa, in order to further that point, you know, you had all the descriptors, and she's dead.
Right?
No risk.
Well, and second unpopular opinion, I understand the CW's demographic, and I know why they put the team together that was the potential spinoff on Wayward Daughters with the teenagers. But I'm kind of tired of teenagers saving the world. I'd like to see some people with some experience. And if I could have seen, speaking for myself, Jody, Donna, Annie, if you could bring her back, someone like Lily, Missouri, as a team hunting, oh my gosh. I mean, that is like a feral wolf pack. Nobody would stand in their way. And that, to me, that's much more interesting than a bunch of angsty teenagers. Been there, done that, you know, went to high school already, kind of done with it. And I know, yeah, we have Riverdale for that, yeah. And I know there were some people who had their hearts broken that Wayward Daughters didn't happen, and I apologize to those folks, but that's what I would have loved to have seen. And it's not the CW's demographic. And then it could have aged gracefully into sort of, you know, the Golden Girls hunt ghosts. I'd pay money to see that.
Annie could have been their ghost advisor from beyond. They could be like, well, maybe we'll have Annie look into this.
Oh yeah.
And give them some info.
Yeah, Pamela could contact her with the Ouija board.
Yeah, I'd have paid money for that. So
big time.
Now, somebody who showed up in a lot of episodes, and amazingly enough, we didn't get to her in previous panels, is Billy, who had a strange and confusing character arc. Anybody want to dive in and be the first to tackle that?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'll always talk. You can.
Okay. Go for it, Carole.
Y'all can just tell me to hush up. I really liked Billy when we first met her.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just want to say, I love Lisa Berry. I think no matter what they gave her, she took it to the wall, you know, and she's a lovely person. And again, you know, met her at cons. She's a lovely, lovely person. So I think she was a really good actress. I think it's, as you just even kind of said, there was a lot of mishmashing with her character. I felt like, I don't know, they wanted to hang on to her and they appreciated her skills and her gifts and stuff. She kind of suffered through a couple of rough transitions, I think, of showrunner and writer, you know, and somewhere as that happened, there was a little loss of focus about who is this character and what are we doing with her? So in the beginning, we had Billy the Reaper. She was, you know, telling the boys, we're done with your crap. Okay, I'm going to reap you for good at some one of these days. And the whole natural order and all of that. I felt as we went on with her, she actually, when they finally made her death, I actually felt her character kind of weakened at that point. They made her death and they thought, oh, this is going to be really cool and it's really exciting. And then they didn't know what to do with her. So there was a lot of her coming into a scene at the end of the episode and making some kind of dark but vague pronouncement, you know, and it really lost focus for me.
Mhm.
And it was strictly the writing, nothing to do with her, that they made her death. They're like, now what do we do? You know, and as the storyline itself floundered in those last late years, she was some of the jetsam caught up in that floundering, you know, and the zest I had for Billy in the beginning waned a lot, unfortunately. That's my take.
I agree with that. So with Billy as the Reaper, you know, she was very much, you know, law and order. This is how it's done, natural order of things. But then when they made her death, it's like, all right, now she's powered up, but still can't do anything with the Winchesters. And it's, I mean, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, she kept talking a big game, but she was never, and again, it was a writer thing. She was never able to act on her threats. And that was, you know, because the time when Dean overdosed on the medication when he thought Sam was dead with the werewolves. And she just stood there and she's like, all right, come on, Dean, let's go. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna go. And like, Billy would have grabbed him by the throat and said, we're done, let's go. So yeah, I mean, they did the character disservice by amping her up so high to begin with, and then giving her death powers and then not letting her do anything with them.
And you can really see it because picture Julian death in that exact same situation. They would have been, the Winchesters would have been peeing in their pants.
Yes.
Okay, they were terrified of him, and they worked with him, and but they were always terrified of him. They were never terrified of Billy, never. You know, and that right there undermines her character.
Melissa?
Billy the Reaper, amazing, awesome, fabulous, like everybody said. Billy death, I feel like the writers had one of those wheels, like a Wheel of Fortune wheel in the writing room, and they had just all of these different plot points and ideas for her, and they just kept spinning it because it made no sense. The actress did, as everybody else has said, she laid it all out on the floor. She gave us everything she had with the crappy writing that she had to deal with, and it's not her fault. So Billy's death never worked for me, but that's not her fault. Billy the Reaper, can we have her back, please?
What about you, Anne?
Well, I agree with what everybody else has said. I love Lisa. She's a great actress, but yeah, I mean, word for word, Melissa is exactly what I was feeling. I love Billy the Reaper. But her whole arc as Death just, it didn't do it for me. And that's really sad, I think.
Yeah. And I agree, you know, the actress is fantastic and boy, can she sing. And I loved her story. And I know some of you were at the convention where she told the story about how she had tried out for years for a part on Supernatural and didn't make it. And then they brought her in, you know, to be Billy. But I hate canon inconsistency. And we got told that Death would reap God. And then Death wasn't even part of reaping Chuck. And that made me angry on a writer level because, you know, it was Chekhov's guns over the mantle that you're supposed to shoot by the end of scene 3. And we had waited so long. And like, did you guys forget that? Have you watched the first episodes? I'm not always sure about that. So yeah, that was probably my biggest thing, as well as just, okay, well, who's Billy going to be this week? Is she nice Billy? Is she mean Billy? Is she pissed off Billy? Because I do think the Wheel of Fortune probably existed. And speaking of that, another character that kind of fell on that wheel was Eileen. we're just going to touch all the sacred, the third rails here. Poor Eileen. Anybody want to take that by the horns?
I'll start this time.
Okay.
I really loved that episode where we first met Eileen. I thought that was a terrific episode. I thought she was terrific. I loved, and I just blanked on the actress's name, who was the cougar who was after Dean.
Dean.
The older lady in the nursing home.
Yeah.
Okay, slipping her hand up his thigh.
Yeah.
That was
me. But anyway, I just love that episode. And then she made some other appearances, and that didn't Sam like call her sometimes or something along the way, I think. But I don't know, I felt a little bit like they were forcing the romance. They forced the romance. And that's another that's another writer thing, that they had this great character, but they forced that whole subplot of the romance, and it never felt real to me. I mean, I know she cared about Sam, and I know Sam cared about her, but it just didn't do it for me.
Carol, you're dying to jump in there. I can tell.
I'm sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about that.
Totally. I agree with Anne. I loved the introduction of Eileen. I thought she was, once again, here we have a hunter in her own right. She's doing her own thing. She doesn't need, she's independent, and doing so with being deaf and everything, which you would think would be a problem, but she's obviously worked around it all her life and stuff. And I think Shoshana Stern, once again, terrific actress, and they cast really great people. And so she was really terrific. I was totally down with her and Sam becoming friends. And clearly they had the better communication because he had some sign and they had hit it off and all of that. And that's great, so he's texting her in the car and whatever. And that's fine because, it's nice to see them have a friend. They don't have too many of those. But when they start heading into the whole, it was really, I think, primarily after she dies, when she's killed and then she's brought back, that's when it really starts heading into the whole romance thing. And I'm just going to point out, once again, we went from seasons 11 and 12 into season 15, and we had that significant, I just can't not point this out every single time about the transition between the storylines and the showrunners and everything takes this cataclysmic turn. And in this case, starting to try to force Eileen down our throats as this romantic interest. They do at some point kind of reveal that a lot of this was done by Chuck, that Chuck was the one manipulating her into like trying to be with Sam and stuff like that. But Sam doesn't know, and they show him kind of going along with it. And he seems so awkward every time, and the whole thing is awkward. And they were great as friends, and they had zip chemistry to me as anything romantic. He had more chemistry with Sarah or with Madison than he did with Eileen. Eileen was the perfect, like, Hunter sister, like Joe could have been, where she's in the world and she's in the family, but please not as a romantic, interest kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm afraid I wrote a story about that one time, just so I could get rid of her. Bye-bye, Eileen. I actually used that as a tag.
Melissa?
That's it.
Michelle?
Ditto, and especially ditto on the whole lack of chemistry. The kiss that Sam and Eileen shared, I remember going on Twitter right after that and being like, what was that? And someone else was like, it was so romantic and it was so lovely. And I'm like, there is more chemistry between Dean and Charlie than there was between Sam and Eileen. Like, come on. And I love Eileen as a character, but when they started to make it into the romance thing, it's like, no, guys, no.
Yeah, and I thought the whole thing about Chuck manipulating her was very disrespectful to the character, and especially his comment about, oh yeah, I powered her down in a broom closet like she's some sort of sex bot. I mean, that really pissed me off. Eileen deserved better than that.
Yeah.
I agree, she would have been a wonderful friend, and I get a little prickly about this whole idea that women can only be mothers or love interests, but we can't possibly have a friend that you aren't secretly trying to get into bed with. That is so done. And yeah, that was probably one of the most awkward kisses, although he did keep telling Dean it's not like that. And then the scriptwriters made it like that.
But that's even part of the conflict, because they were like, on the one hand, and the other hand,
yeah,
like,
it just
what are we supposed to be thinking and feeling here?
And also in that episode with Mrs. Butters, it's like they're practicing sign language. Like, really? Like, is that supposed to be like, is Sam just being his normal, like, oblivious self? And he's like, yeah, we were just practicing sign language, and that's really what they were doing, or was that a really creepy veiled attempt, and also slightly ableist and offensive to use that as a euphemism for sex? So
yeah, that was just strange. Speaking of Mrs. Butters, she was only there for one episode. I really thought they were going to bring her back in the end and kind of Avengers Assemble, this whole team of superpowered friends that we hadn't seen, like Jesse, and I was expecting her to be sort of the Dobby character who, you shall not hurt Dean Winchester. And then she just went back to her forest and we never saw her again. But
Jesse's living in the forest.
she's living in the forest with Jesse and doing his laundry, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about Mrs. Butters? On one hand, kind of cool, and on another hand, sort of creepy. Michelle?
Well, I love the fact that we're finally seeing some sort of Fae representation, even though we had to wait, 15 seasons to really, aside from the Banshees and whatnot. But having that sort of wood nymph or a dryad sort of type of character was different. But then the fact that she was also essentially held captive by the men of letters, and she was their live-in maid, and I think it was said that she was there pretty much voluntarily, but for I don't remember if she was actually there voluntarily or not, or they like trapped her. They probably trapped her because that weird guy was involved.
Cuthbert Sinclair.
Cuthbert Sinclair. So here we have a mother character who is being held and forced to help these men of letters. And yeah, she's powerful and she seems to enjoy her life there, but at the same time, she really misses her family. And so it's she's kind of a double-edged sword for me. Like I like the fact that we're actually getting into like mid-European Fae folklore, but at the same time, she's a mother character that is again being misused by the writers.
At least she didn't end up in the nightgown of death.
True.
She always had her little tweed suit.
That's right. Carole?
Oh, I thought she was terrific. I loved that she was, in fact, so powerful. We find out, like at first we're like, oh, okay, this is cool. And she can make bag lunches and she bakes a nice cake. And then we find out she's really freaking powerful. And that was really neat. I liked that. I liked the Fae, slant on that as well. I think there was, I can't recall, I should have watched this one again, but I think there was some way that she was constrained in some way. I don't know if they made a bargain with her that this would happen if she stayed with them, or, you know, this wouldn't happen if she stayed with them. She was not there completely of her own free will. And she knew so much that they didn't even realize they didn't know. You know, like she knew the mystery of the telescope, you know, viewing other worlds. And they're like, there are no other worlds. And she's like, oh, that's bad. You know,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
played it so beautifully under, yeah, you know, she was so adorable and almost like English in that, with that little prim and the tweed suit, and oh well, you have to, you know, have your little bag lunch, and no, Dean, you're having smoothies because your cholesterol is too high. So I really liked the blend of, she's really powerful, but she was in her own way very nurturing. Would have liked to have found out more about her. That was a story I feel they could have done over 2 or 3 episodes. They could have stretched that out, really let us chew on that and show these different aspects and let that power really lead up to something. And they kind of frittered it away, you know, which unfortunately is, you know, how a lot of season 15 went. So I enjoyed what we got of her. Would have liked more. We got what we got. And she won the gag reel.
That's true.
Oh, I haven't watched the gag reel yet. So I have to agree, Carole, with almost everything you said. I mean, she really, I thought she was so much fun at the beginning, and I liked seeing the Fae aspect, but what you said just resonated with me, Carole, about it seemed like they could have done that story arc over 3, 4 or more episodes. And it would have been interesting to explore more of how she really came to be with the Men of Letters, and how whatever it was that Cuthbert did to constrain her, or whatever bargain it was, I can't remember either. And it just seemed like there was so much they could have done with that had they had this story idea in season 12 or season 10 or something, and she could have come back. And I like you, Gail, I thought they were going to maybe have an Avengers Assemble moment, and I really wanted to see Jesse again. I really did. I'm sorry for that digression, but I just, you know, anyway, another, like you said, another good character that could have done a lot more.
Okay, Melissa?
I love this character. I loved seeing some Fae representation. I love seeing the boys having somebody who was nurturing and cared about them, and who wasn't afraid to, you know, shake her finger at them when they needed it. And then we get a glimpse of how much the Men of Letters were punks, because we know that they did something underhanded to trap her there to begin with. I'm disappointed that they didn't do more with that character. Like everybody else said, they could have woven her story in over several episodes. It didn't have to be one whole Mrs. Butters or 2 or 3. Like the whole episode didn't have to be focused on her. They could have woven it into other pieces of stories that were going on. I would have rather seen more of her than some of the half-baked reunions we got the last season, because that annoyed the snot out of me. That's a whole other story.
Mark that down for a panel, Gail. Things that annoyed the snot out
of us. Yes.
But then it comes back to, she's yet another maternal figure that we have to throw in, and we don't actually allow the character to shine, because they were trying to squish it in, say, oh look, here's this wonderful mother figure. Oh look, here's some really funny moments. I'm sorry, Dean in that nightshirt. If it wasn't for Mrs. Butters, we wouldn't have Dean in the nightshirt. I'm just saying.
She'll be in those hot dog pants. Yeah, the hot dog sleep pants.
I'm done. I can't.
Scooby-Doo boxers.
So we've got a one-hit wonder Hunter edition here with some of the people that were only around for one episode, but could have been interesting for more. We have Tamara and Tasha and Alicia Barnes, and Dauphine, the woman of letters on the submarine. They had fairly small parts or just one episode, but they also were memorable in their own way. I really thought we were going to see Tasha Barnes and her brother come back, with her being not quite human anymore in their own way, and we didn't. Any thoughts about those characters? Any or all? Michelle?
I would have loved to seen the Barnes twins back, and yeah, developing that story of where they're not quite human anymore, and also the extra powers. But I don't know. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that the other characters just really didn't make much of an impression on me. And I thought that the hunter that they recruited 15 episode 1 and 2 when they're in, and it was kind of like Sam's like point of contact, the woman hunter, I thought that was Tamara until I looked that up. And it's like, oh wait, no, she didn't come back. Okay, that was a missed opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but aside from the twins, like, I don't really have much of a feeling or emotion attached to any of the other characters.
Okay, Melissa?
Tamara was okay. She was like I was like, okay, yeah, all right. She didn't, I didn't really hit me one way or the other. Dauphine, although I can never remember what her name is, I really liked that character. It was, but I like the character, but the flip side is this felt like another one of those, here you go, here's your woman character who's kind of strong, here you go, we're gonna slide her in for an episode. And of course it didn't make sense for her to be in more than one episode, I get that, but it just felt a little bit like, okay, how many women have we had this season? Okay, we got to fit another one in here, so let's do this. She was a perfectly fine character. I like what they did with her, but it just kind of felt like I'm just crossing off that list that we have to have however many women in this show. So here you go.
Okay, Anne?
I liked the twins. I thought that they were a great set of characters, and it almost struck me when I saw them in both the Asa Fox episode and the episode where their mother died. It almost struck me that they were hosting a trial balloon for another spinoff, but it just, I don't know if it would have worked or not, but Tamara was badass, but I think I kind of agree with Michelle that, okay, here's another woman hunter. She loses her husband. She goes on hunting. Goodbye. It didn't really catch her character, even though I liked the character and I thought the story with the 7 deadly sins was interesting. It didn't really grab me.
Okay.
So
Tamara was certainly badass. I think that was the first time we saw a married team of hunters. So that was kind of interesting, like, oh, look, they can be married. I mean, just a whole different, hunters can be all kinds of different people. But I thought she was very one note. They did not like flesh her out at all. Like, let's compare to, Mrs. Butters was more fleshed out than Tamara was. Tamara was just to get in there, lose her husband, scream a lot and then leave. So, she was badass, but we didn't connect that personally with her. Semi-unpopular opinion. I know people love the Barnes twins. The Baines twins. I'm like, they're fine. They're okay. I didn't particularly bond with them. I don't know. They really seized a lot of fandom's, attention and affection and stuff. And I was just kind of like, yeah, there they are. Okay. So they just kind of came and went to me. I did like Delphine a lot, partly because she was in an era that a lot of women would not have been doing this, you know, especially being connected with men of letters and stuff. And they just, you know, look at Josie, who was always trying to get in there and stuff. But she was so competent. She knew her stuff. She was very capable. And as we talked about in the earlier part where we're talking about Lily in Missouri and Pamela, she met her death square. She knew it was coming and she sacrificed herself. I won't say willingly, because who's willing about it, but she knew that this is what had to be done and she did it, you know. So I thought of those three, I liked Delphine the most. But I won't say any of them particularly got any realistic kind of characterization. Like I say, I think with, you know, we knew more about Annie or Mrs. Butters than we did these other three. So I agree, they're kind of like, we're plugging in slots here of, got to counterbalance this very male heavy show by throwing in these kind of different women here from time to time, just to, you know, season it up.
Well, folks, we have run out of time, believe it or not. I knew we could do it, and we got through pretty much everybody who has come up on another panel. So thank you all. But let's do a quick round and tell everybody where people can find you online. Carole?
Hi, I'm on Twitter as true_firesign10, and all of my fiction is on AO3 under firesign10. Mind the tags.
Anne?
I'm on Facebook mostly, just my name, Ann Wicker, and also Twitter is just my name, Ann Wicker, and I'm on Instagram under Ann.Wicker2.
Okay, Michelle?
You can find me on Twitter at preheatingprof.
And Melissa?
When I'm not stalking a certain writer's fanfic over on AO3, I'm stalking Gail and Anne and the rest of the folks over in Gail's Supernatural group.
Well, and I'm pretty easy to find under both my names on social media and at the Supernatural TFWNC fan group. But most of the time, I'm here on Continual. So many, many thanks to our wonderful panelists for another great panel. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up here on Continual. So we'll see you online.